So, currently we are working on writing assessment in Romance languages. And I guess I was going to put an emphasis today on the creation of student learning goals. One of the first projects that we undertook when the committee started several years ago was writing they have various names, learning goals. I think we decided on student learning outcomes. And they are based on, I don't know if based on is the right way of saying it, they're informed by, they were written in conjunction with existing actual guidelines on writing proficiency. And essentially what we did was we looked at the levels that we thought our students should be at based on course content, based on 100, 200 level. And then we came up with learning goals. This might be a good time to hand out the...
You just did.
You did, great.
So you should all have this handout.
So the first thing I wanted to point out was if you look at writing on this document, this is an early draft that we worked with in the committee, and the idea was that there was a progression of the way we elaborated what students should be able to do. I don't know, should we take a second maybe to just glimpse across? Would that be an efficient way of doing it? Maybe I'll read the first one. For example, at the 100 level, it's these are included in the syllabi across the level, so students know from day one in the course when they get their syllabi what they should be able to do by the end of the course. For example, in the 100 level in writing, I'll be able to write short, simple messages dealing with everyday issues. I'll be able to describe in basic sentences myself, my friends, my friends and family, my immediate surroundings, and my daily routines. And I just gave you up to the 275, which is our bridge course. But you can see that there's a progression that corresponds to the content of the course and what students should be able to do by the time they get to the next level. We did this both for ourselves so that we would be able to kind of take the torch from our predecessor and flesh out student ability when we receive students, and for students for the same reason, so that by the time that they entered the next level of course, they had a pretty good idea of what they were going to be able to do. We wanted there to be transparency across the curriculum and across the various levels. As I mentioned, we included the student learning outcomes in our syllabi. I think we're all doing it now in all languages and all courses. And I put this down as an issue, departmental uniformity. The idea was that we wanted to make our lives easier so that everybody knew what everybody else was doing. At the same time, we did not want to compromise teacher autonomy. This has been an issue that hasn't really been resolved yet, I don't think. But particularly in the upper level courses, the content courses, teachers have things that they do from semester to semester that work, and we didn't really want to impose anything on anyone. So I put that up there as something to think about. Linking linguistic progress to the SLOs. Again, the point of this was to be able to come up with a progression, so teachers and students both know that the student learning outcomes that we wrote for them should be the goal, it should be the target for students, and it's a way to monitor their linguistic progress. So that by the time they graduate from our program, or by the time they're done studying in one of our languages, they should have a pretty good idea of where they need to be, and we can see if we hit the mark. That was really the basis for coming up with these SLOs. We don't know if we've hit the mark yet, because we're still in the process of assessing our goals. And it might be the case that we need to lower the level a bit, maybe we need to raise the level. We're still in the process of evaluating, we're still collecting data, we're still collecting writing samples. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but we asked colleagues to share existing rubrics. We put a survey together. Am I getting ahead of myself? Probably. Well, we collected samples of writings. We have a nice collection of samples from across the curriculum, across the board, and we're waiting to assess them based on the rubric that we come up with. We asked colleagues to share existing rubrics, and there's very little out there. As Denise said, a lot of the times the grade is kind of just a feeling. You read the paper, you have an idea whether or not students hit the mark. And we wanted to see what our colleagues were currently using. There's very little out there. I think I received maybe 3 rubrics from the 100 level to the 400 level in writing, and that might be an issue that's specific to writing. We did the same thing for the oral proficiency last year, and I'm willing to bet there were many more rubrics in place for that. That's a little bit that's a task that lends itself a little bit more, I think, to using a rubric. So the goal of our assessment project is to, again, see if we're hitting the mark with our expectations of the writing level for all courses and languages, as pertains to the various genres of writing that students engage in. The two keys, I believe, Shauna, tell me if I'm wrong about this, but basically was to generate a list of best practices that we could share among faculty members. And the holy grail of the project, I think, is to come up with a rubric that can be modified from level to level, from course to course, from teacher to teacher, based on the needs of the individual course. We haven't done it yet. We're still working on it. We've done a lot of work in the subcommittee looking at existing rubrics at peer institutions, and we've got several good ideas, but this is still a work in progress, I think. Any questions at this point?
I just was looking briefly at your descriptions here. Would you say that in general that 201 you're still talking about mainly personal things, the personal realm, and then in 202 you're getting into away from that somewhat?
Yeah, we've classified that 202 course, or I believe it's the 275 course now, as our bridge course.
Okay, but the students have to take 202 before they get to your 75.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think that's the case
Well,
anymore,
in
is it?
French,
That is
it's
this.
not in Italian.
It's different.
It's very different.
Yeah, we have different
That's
structures in
what
our
we
department.
told.
In Italian, for example, they go from the 100 level, 101, 102, or we have the intensive course. They go from that to the 201, and then from the 201 they go right to the bridge course, which is the 275, which is there's a very particular structure, I would say, in Romance languages. I know Spanish and French and probably Portuguese have different structures in Italian.
And in Spanish as well.
Can you give me an idea of the length of the tasks that
Sure.
you assign
So
in
there's
those two
a
levels?
progression there as well.
Yeah.
I just saw this today, as a matter of fact. We start at, I think it's 50 or 75 words perhaps, the very first assignment the student will ever encounter. And then by the end of the 200 level, they're producing 500 word essays, I believe.
That's at the end of 27500?
That'll be at the end of the course.
I want to
the
clarify that,
275
because
course.
in French, Spanish, 202 is the fourth semester.
Yes.
In Italian, the 275 is a hybrid, it's like a 4/5th semester. So I would look at the 202 maybe in what you're thinking of.
All right, well, let's disregard Italian.
Let's.
and just look at French and Spanish. Then what would you say is the general length of the pieces that they're writing in 20202?
I think that's part of what our assessment conversations are. For example, I was a part of a subgroup writing learning goals for the 5th semester in the other languages, because it's different than Italian. And that was we just did that this fall, to put in place this spring. And we brought in TNR to talk about when they move on to that advanced intro to lit or what type of course. So I think that is still something we're wanting to come back and have a follow-up discussion for the other learning goals we've already written. And when we went through this process for the 5th semester course, it was still kind of all over the map, if you will, from 2 to 4 to 5 to 7 writing assignments. Well, how long? I think that has to have some more discussion there. It's a good question, but again, I think Patrick mentioned and quite well, we're now assessing our own assessment.
Right.
Well, I think when we've started talking about writing in German, and we're finding that there is not enough uniformity in what's going on in individual courses, and it always bumps up against the academic freedom, and once I close my door.
And that's why we kind of gave a range, like for that 5th semester, if I recall, and we do put it out there, and we kind of have an internal view, and then we have the student view. This is more of a student view of the learning goals, is why it says I in the first person. But in this 5th semester, we suggested a range of 3 to 5. Again, it may be, you may teach that 5th semester a little bit different than myself, so it does give that flexibility of maybe a little bit of length difference or difficulty if you're tying it to a text or something.
You're saying 3 to 5 pages.
3 to 5, right? And we found that, and again, working with faculty from all levels together on the subcommittee. Good writing, 2 to 3 pages. I mean, sometimes it's harder to write well in a shorter paper than you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 page paper maybe isn't